Hey everyone, and welcome back for episode 96 of the Path Podcast. I am Jason.
Hey, I'm Derrick.
We are so glad that you have decided to join us on the Path this week. Derrick, we're kind of at a sort of a pivotal moment in the book of Revelation. We, as we've sort of been talking prior to this, we're sort of at the halfway point of the book of Revelation. We just finished up chapter 11 yesterday, and there are 22 chapters in the book of Revelation. So 22 divided by 2 is 11.
There you go.
So there we are, right there in the middle. And so today, what I want us to do is talk about, it's sort of, I feel like the book of Revelation chapter 11 is kind of this crescendo of like, God did what he said he's going to do, and let's celebrate kind of thing. But at the same time, there's just like some super impactful and important truths for us to learn about our relationship with God and how that impacts the way we live. So yesterday, we talked about how God is this reigning king that as we've been trudging along all through the book of Revelation, it's just been this talk over and over of how the kingdom of God is coming, and now it's here. And so we talked about how, God reigns as king, and all of it serves to point us to worship him. So two things that stood out to me was that, number one, that the worshiper, that as worshipers, when we know who Jesus is, when we know what he has done, it stirs up our hearts to worship. And I think that's vitally important. I love for you to talk about that. But then also that as followers of Christ, we must acknowledge our need for him, that we need for him to reign in our lives. We need for him to rule and guide us and show us what to do. So maybe for a few minutes, if we could talk about how those two things intersect, that when we know Jesus more, it leads us to worship him more. But at the same time, we need him to rule in our lives. That maybe it's sort of that tension of Jesus is the friend who sticks closer than a brother, but at the same time, he's the creator of the universe and the all-powerful God. And so how do those things work together for us as we kind of crescendo? And we're gonna be taking a break from the book of Revelation for the rest of the year. But just talk about those things for a few minutes. That was a lot there. Sorry.
No, it's good. Yeah, number one, folks, here you have it right here on the Path Podcast. You get Jesus and theology and arithmetic.
That's right. We're covering all the bases.
Yeah, Jason did a division problem there.
That's right. You're welcome. And I did that in my head.
There you go.
No calculator.
There you go. No, I'm just playing. So, yeah, I think number one, like what's important to kind of realize is that this is that seventh and final trumpet blast, right? Yeah. This warning, echoing throughout all creation, all heaven, all earth, all above the earth, below the earth, that kind of thing. Each and every one brought with it, this in my mind, this voluminous sound, thing, not sound necessarily, but this just this loud trumpet blast brought judgment, or thunder and lightning. Yeah. These
There's no confusion about whether or not the trumpet had sounded.
Right.
Everybody heard it. You didn't get away from it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so every single one through 6, it's the announcement of the coming king, and because he comes and clashes against the kingdom of this world, it has dire implications for anyone who still worships the king of this earth, right? Satan and his ways, and follows his own ways, and those kind of things. Well, this one, this seventh trumpet blast, has an equally loud volume to it, but it's different. What results after this trumpet blast is the voluminous worship or praise of the people of God, right? I don't want that imagery to be lost on us.
Absolutely.
Right? I think that's important. Is that warnings turn into worship. Now, you mentioned the importance of, understanding who God is, who Jesus is, and what He's done, and that spurs us to worship Him, right? Well, one of the things we talked about is that He overcomes, right? And that's what the people worship Him for. They say the kingdom of this world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of His Christ, and He will reign forever and ever. It's just this idea that, evil has been raging for centuries, and He's coming against it. And we even see a beast from the abyss, and locust with stingers and face like people, like these terrifying images, right? We saw all this thing, this evil awakened, if you will, in a way, and what we see here in this moment is that Jesus conquers it all.
Yeah.
Jesus conquers it all. He overcomes it and overwhelms it. I said, it's not original with me, but Jesus didn't come to take sides. He came to take over.
Right.
And it's true. He came to be the ruling and reigning King of all creation and of all things. And these people, these worshipers, are acknowledging that and understanding. Right. Well, that's because they knew who He was.
Yeah.
They knew what He had done. Not just in this magnanimous way of conquering the earth, but understanding in their own lives the things He had conquered for them, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's what we kind of hinted on a little bit, was that it was that the Jesus who comes to overcome the world and all the things in it, sin, death, the reigning of selfishness and pain and trial and tribulation and suffering and hardship and all these things, he ultimately overcomes it. Yeah. And He overcomes it in my life and your life. And if we don't know who He is, right? If we don't intimately interact with Him, if our relationship to Jesus is relegated to a Sunday morning service where we come and sit and either feel good about ourselves or we feel bad about ourselves, and we like that either way. Right. Well, I got a good sermon today and stepped on my toes a little bit, blah, blah, whatever. If that's all it is for us, and we don't grow in our intimate knowledge of who Jesus is and what He does for us, and we don't pray gut-wrenching prayers of, God, I can't get through this if you don't come with me. Yeah. If we fail to grow in that aspect of our relationship with the Lord and know how He overcomes and know who He is and know Him intimately, I fear we'll miss out on this type of worship, to understand who He is and what He's done and how important He is and how important He is to creation and history, and how important He is to my life. Yeah, absolutely. In my day in and my day out. And because a lot of this is the way I understand Revelation, it's stuff that's happened, is happening, and will happen. It just kind of all just lumped into one. Right.
There's layers of
right.
Layers. Yeah.
So in a way, we certainly have yet to see this scene of, the king. The King of Heaven is now the King of Earth as well. Right. That idea, we haven't seen the full victory that Christ will once and for all have, but we can look to that. We can understand that. We can know that it's coming. But when I say that is that evil still rages. Yeah. Temptation is still near. Right. Paul said, "We wrestle not against the flesh and blood, but against the principalities, the power of the air." We wrestle with this spiritual realm that wants us to fall, wants us to rely upon ourselves, wants us to think we can overcome. And I mean, after preaching that message yesterday, and understanding these things and having studied these things, I awoke this morning trying to live my life in my own strength. Like I have found recently where there are moments where I just don't feel like praying. And I can't think of anything else, because I've seen the fruit of trusting in Jesus. I can't think of anything else, but it's just spiritual warfare. Yeah. You don't need that, Derrick. Trust in yourself. Depend upon yourself. thankfully, the Lord caught my attention. The Lord helped me to understand that today.
Mm-hmm.
But I have seen that again where it's just weird. And I can't say anything, but it's just that spiritual warfare. It's that evil still wanting me to rely upon myself.
Yeah.
And, it's not like some demon whispered to me or something, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
It's just this, like, this, I should know what Jesus, and I have seen the fruit of my relationship with him in the past months, and it's been some of the most sweet and amazing, intimate times with the Lord. And then you just wake up and be like, I don't really feel like it today.
Right. I think that's a great, that is a great tie-in to that second point that we talked about, that we have to acknowledge that we need him, because we can't do this on our own. And I agree with you. I've seen in my own life where you have moments where you're like, I got this under control, and it's in those moments that it immediately goes out of control.
Yeah.
and so knowing that Jesus is the one who can take control, but just knowing that is not enough. We have to also acknowledge, God, I know that you can do this, and I need you to do it for me. That's a huge thing, because I think that's two sides of the same coin of worship. That yes, we worship him because of who he is, but part of worship is our submission to him, to say, God, I can't do this on my own. I need your help.
One day, I think I said it this way yesterday. If not, I meant to. One day, Jesus will rule and reign the cosmos.
Yeah.
And we see a picture of worshipers acknowledging it here.
Right.
And I think we like that. I think we understand that. We know that. But the question is he ruling my heart today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you get that, right? Well, I think it's a daily submission to say, Lord, today's your day.
Yeah.
I love you. I want to follow you. I want this day to be your day for me and in my life, And it's sometimes doing that. I'm just trying to be transparent, because I think it's helpful to realize that even if pastors deal with that from time to time, it's normal.
Right.
But the thing you can't do is let it continue.
Yeah, you can't let it go unchecked.
And you just got to say, Lord, I don't know what's going on with me today. I may not want to read your word. I may not want to submit. I may not want to do that. But God, I'm going to do it because I know I need you. Will you help me to acknowledge that and understand it? Will you help me in my life to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. We actually have a great example of that kind of submission today. We have another interview for you. This is the last episode of Missions Month this week, and we interview Patty Wallace and Marilynn Fulmer, people that you know very well here from our church, and about how they chose to submit to God, to follow after his leadership, to start the GriefShare ministry here at Lafayette First. So take a moment, listen to this incredible interview about how they felt God calling them into a ministry, and then we'll be back to wrap things up here in just a minute. Well, here we are, everyone, as we said, with two people that hopefully you're already very familiar with, but we're here with Patty Wallace and Marilynn Fulmer. Thank y'all for being here today.
Oh, you're welcome.
We appreciate it. We want to make sure that you know them well, but then also they are leading a very, very important ministry for our church here at Lafayette First. And so if you guys would introduce yourselves real quick, just give us the Cliff Notes version of what brought you to this point. And then maybe before we talk about GriefShare, maybe share who you are, and then what has led you to where you felt like you needed to start a GriefShare ministry here. So whichever one of you wants to go first.
All right. Well, I'm Patty Wallace, and I grew up in this church. I was a wife and mother and daughter, and it's just always been a big part of my life. I taught school for 35 years, so I knew a lot of the children, and I know a lot of people in town because I taught a lot of them and their mothers and daddies. But my husband passed away a few years ago, and then my mother passed away a year ago, and I was a caregiver for 8 years, so I was not very active in the church at that time.
Yeah.
But I was listening to God and during all that time. But I'm happy to be home again in the church, because it's a real comforting place to be.
Yeah.
Do you want her to tell about it?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I'm Marilynn Fulmer, and I moved to Lafayette when I was in grammar school. And I have always loved Lafayette. I love the people in it. Working at the phone company, you knew everyone. So it's just always been a desire of mine to do things in my community. And then later in life, I was not able to do a lot of things in Lafayette because I worked out of town. And now that I'm retired, and I'm able to do for the church and in the community, and I love that. But I was a wife, a mother to Cindy Langford and Tom. And my husband passed away 12 years ago. And at that time, we were involved in Lafayette First. And I don't know, a few years afterwards, I felt like I needed to do something else. So I think this GriefShare may have been where the Lord was sending me the whole time. But my desire is to help others in the community no matter what needs to be done if I'm available.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, let me just say that we are thankful for both of you, and we're glad that you're a part of our church family. But both of you have mentioned this thing, GriefShare. So explain to us, and for the people that are listening, what is GriefShare, and why is it important that we have it here at Lafayette First?
Well, I really didn't know what it was at first. My brother, his wife passed away, and they talked him into going, and he went to Knoxville, and it helped him so much. He kept telling me that I had to go. So there wasn't one right around here, so I went to the one in Flintstone, and it changed me so much that I knew that it worked. I didn't know how it worked, but I knew it worked. And when we decided to do this together, our first meeting, I told the ladies, I said, I can't tell you how this works. I said, it's just a thing with God, because it just does. It helps you. And it had helped me so much when I went. That's the reason I wanted to try GriefShare here, because I knew that it did work. And it's made a big difference in our family of GriefShare ladies. We just are real close to all of them.
Yeah, that's great.
And one man and most women.
Yeah. What would you add to that, Marilynn?
I would add, of course, I went to counseling. It was not spiritually based. And when Patty and I started talking, and she mentioned GriefShare, and I started watching it, it's the counselors it's a video. And I think the one thing that I like the most about it is the fact that it's spiritually based. And another thing, when you go through grief and you're in a group, by the time you get through that session, you're a family. And you're a family that you can call upon when you need help.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because everybody in that room's going through the same thing.
Sure.
And so we have shared intimate details about our life. And it's just easy to call upon these people and talk with them and help each other through.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that grief is one of those things that Derrick mentioned before we started recording here, that grief is one of those things that nobody really tells us how to deal with. You have to kind of figure it out along the way. And so, Derrick, maybe would you just kind of expand on that a little bit about this idea of working through grief, but from a biblical perspective?
Yeah, I agree. Even having a psychology degree as my bachelor's degree and a counseling degree as one of my master's degrees, I knew about grief and the stages of grief, and even trained on how to help people through those and advance through those stages. But until you lose someone and experience deep, deep grief, there's no teacher-like experience, someone that's been there to say, I don't know your grief, but I know what my grief felt like, and I know it's hard, and I want to walk with you as much as I can. And so, yeah, and preaching a message on Sunday morning is not enough. Even being a part of a Sunday school class, those are great, and those folks can help you through your grief. But there is just something special about people who know what you've been through. They know what to say and how to say it sometimes, or what not to say, really, more than anything. The things that weren't helpful to hear during their grief. And so, that I knew we needed to do something. I wanted to do something. And even had an opportunity. Marilynn, you and I talked pretty soon after I got here that this was on your heart.
Yes.
And so we had a local coroner's office, do a biblical grief thing for 6 weeks. And it was helpful. It was good. But we knew that we wanted to start something long-term and going forward. And I was so thankful that God had been working on each of you individually. And so, COVID kind of put it on a little bit of a hiatus but I'm so glad that through all that we were able to keep going and push forward and start it, because it has been helpful, and it's an outreach. And that's one of the things, and while we're interviewing y'all, is because we're thinking about this is Missions Month, and something as simple as offering a class for people who are grieving. It's such an outreach, such a mission.
Absolutely.
And so, I'm so thankful, as Jason has already exclaimed earlier, that we're thankful for y'all and your willingness to say, here I am, God, use me. Use what my grief experience, use, going through grief counseling myself or grief group myself, and how I can help. And it's been tremendous. It is working and helping in so many ways. And it's just our first session, and I see many, many, many more in our future, and helping many, many, many more people who are facing grief. Yeah. And I love that it's done from a biblical standpoint.
Yes, me too.
Absolutely.
It is, and it just people keep dribbling in, and we keep saying, well, they've kind of missed the first part, but each class has a lesson in it. And they can come back and in January or February when we start the next one, and then get caught up. But they know how much we all care, and it's just I always thought the most important thing I ever did was teach school and be with all the children and all that. And now God has placed me in another way to. Which now I think this is a very important thing, and as long as He gives me the help and the way we can do it, because it really has helped me, because I was still going through grief, and this has helped me. And Marilynn she helped me with when my husband was sick, even, so she knew what it was. Like, she went to school with both of us, so we.
Yeah. That's a great transition, I think, into our next question. But so you guys are you're in the middle of your first session, our first official session here.
Yes, we are.
You still have 3 more weeks.
Maybe.
4 more weeks. 4 more weeks.
4
okay.
more, I believe.
So 4 more weeks, and I think it's been. I've heard nothing but good things about it. But what would you say to someone who would say, well, I'm not really having to deal with grief right now, or God's not called me to help in that kind of area? Because I think it's obvious to me that both of you guys have a passion for this, to help people walk through this, through the process of grief. But what would you say to someone who says they're not called to grief ministry?
Well, we've had people help us along the way. When Marilynn was gone, I asked some people to come in and help.
Sure.
And they all enjoyed it and got to know the people. And so you don't have to take it on, completely if you don't feel called to. But I think your Sunday school class is...
Yes. My Sunday school class, they volunteered to donate snacks for all of us for weeks. I mean, we're still enjoying all of those. And, we couldn't have done it without them. I mean, but then we also have volunteers, Dover Pence and Deborah Pence. They volunteer to come and help us every Thursday night. And they're so faithful. And as Patty said, we've had others to come and volunteer, but they can always come and help. There's always jobs that need to be done, or someone may need to be out. And like Patty said, it may not be a passion of theirs like it is ours, but there's things that they can do in the background if they want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm hearing you say this, but I want to make sure that what I hear is right. But a big part of GriefShare is just showing people that you care.
You love them.
Yeah, and so I think that's a great way for people to get involved. Is that it's easy to just show somebody that you care.
Absolutely.
And so is that a way that people could get involved potentially?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the way it helps, we always feel like that our situation is the worst.
Sure.
That we're grieving worse
nobody's
than
ever
anybody.
felt it like you.
Nobody's and so when you go to GriefShare and these people start telling their stories, you think, wow, I'm glad I didn't have that particular situation. And then you just all kind of worry about each other. Even after we leave, we think, oh, I hope they're doing better tonight. And we had a woman that wouldn't talk for a while, and she finally is, and we just enjoyed her so much. So
that's great.
Yeah, it takes a while for some, and some people aren't ready yet.
Sure.
Some people need to just have their time to grieve and then come. If it's too early, sometimes it's harder.
It takes time. I mean, really, in the very beginning, I know it's easy to encourage someone to come, but honestly, I think they need a little bit of time to just grasp what has happened.
Yeah.
So maybe some that's had a loss within the last 3, 4, 5, 6 months. February may be a good time. And we're hoping to do maybe 2 a year, maybe in the winter months when the days or the nights are longer, cold and dreary outside. And then maybe in the fall again before the holidays.
Sure.
So, and we will be touching on the holidays, I think, a little bit in the next few weeks. So that's always a difficult time for people.
Times,
Yes.
Well, it starts tonight on the one we have tonight. I mean, tomorrow night.
Yeah.
It's talking about how it's hard to go through your first everything.
Yeah.
But going back to what you originally asked too, if we have people in the church that if they can smile, if they can love on these people, if they want to come and stand at the doorway, greet the people as they come in, or be there when we're having snacks and talk with them and encourage them. We look for hope and encouragement every week.
Right.
And God provides.
Yeah.
So
you don't have to be a certified grief counselor to come and help, because you guys are not
No.
certified grief
No,
counselors.
we're not.
Yeah.
No, the main thing is we've been through it.
yes.
Absolutely.
That's the main thing. I just don't see how anybody can be a really good counselor if they don't know what loss is on a personal level.
Right.
And when my husband passed away, in the past I had always felt like that I had been there for friends. But until I lost him, I had no idea the intensity of pain that you go through. And I guess when that happened, you finally decide you want to be there for these people. You want to help them through these things that they're going through. And it varies. And grief is different for everyone. Like me, I needed a lot of downtime, me time, just to get my head together.
Yeah.
But a lot of people want someone else to be around them all the time.
Right.
So it's different. Grief is different for everyone. And that's what we find out during these 13-week sessions. There, another thing, things that you would not even think about. It's really grief that you're going through. Running a stop sign or running a red light. You don't realize it, but part of that's grief too.
Yeah.
So we touch on all of that during these 13 weeks. So it's very helpful, I think, for everybody.
One of the wonderful things about this is that, and this speaks to just missions in general, but just because you're called to help or serve, and we're all called to do that, in a way that's according to our passions and the way the Lord has gifted us. But sometimes it's just that small, you're just a greeter, you're smiling, it seems insignificant almost, but it's not. It's so needed. And then not everyone's called to be the teacher or the facilitator either, and that's okay. And that's in this ministry and GriefShare, but that's in any ministry within the church. Is that a lot of times we need warm bodies with smiling faces, and it's through those situations that I think God puts passions and callings on our hearts that are a little more specific, and I think that's huge. You said something too, and this is just a byproduct. You talked about no one can be a really good grief counselor had they not gone through the grief themselves. And I remember,
that's just my feeling. I
agree with you.
I agree.
I agree with you. And I would say I thought I was a really good pastor until I lost my dad and knew what it really felt like to go through grief. And I thought, and people were thankful, and the ministry of presence is so huge. But I feel like it gave me another level of understanding of what people need, and
it does.
They need from the Lord, from a spiritual leader, and those kind of things. And you're right. I think there is no greater teacher than experience, and especially when it comes to grief. So.
Well, what are, just as we kind of draw to a close here, what are some specific ways that people could help with GriefShare? Other than you've said you need smiling faces and volunteers sometimes, but is there anything else that people could do to help support GriefShare here at Lafayette First?
Well, any donation would be accepted.
Sure.
And the people, what we try to do during our session is we have the video, and then once we have that video, then we have maybe a 15 or 20 minute break in between. And that allows the people in the group to get to know one another, to share their experiences and that kind of thing. But we do provide snacks for them during that time. And so if anyone wants to donate snacks, if they want to come and maybe help during that time frame, if they want to come and set up beforehand, help us with that, or if they want to come and help us right at the end.
Yeah, or help with, we've been trying to keep something alive on the tables, just because it's good to see something alive, and we just simple things like that. But these people will always be friends, and they kind of have gotten together and sit together and laugh together, and it's just completely different than it was the first time, because just about everybody was crying. And I mean, it was just that first meeting was pretty sad, but now we go in and they'll see each other and they'll hug each other, and
it's a family now. It's
That's
a
great.
family.
Well, Marilynn, Patty, thank you so much for being on the podcast this week. We appreciate it. Thank you for how you serve people and how you're going to continue to serve people in the future as we continue GriefShare. We appreciate it, and it's not. I imagine it's not easy work at times, because you're trying to help meet people with the love of Jesus at a moment when they're sometimes at their lowest, and so I'm sure that that's difficult at times. But know that we're praying for you, and that we encourage everybody else to pray for you guys as well as you lead through GriefShare in the future. But thank you all so much for being with us today.
Thank you for asking us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Well, wasn't that a great interview? I'm so thankful for these ladies and their heart, and we've been working on this for a long time, and it has been so fruitful this season, and we're going to keep doing it. And so we need your help to support that as well, as we discussed in that interview. So thank you, Patty. Thank you, Marilynn, and thank you for your heart to follow God, and thank you for your willingness to sacrifice to do that. I know it sacrifices time and energy and all that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this is where we turn it over to you. I think a great thing for us to discuss this week, or to have a conversation about, is what is it that stirs up your heart to worship Jesus? What aspects of who he is, how he reigns in our lives, how he overcomes, how he's our helper, how he's the conquering king. What is it about Jesus that stirs up your heart to worship him? We'd love to talk to you about that. You can email us at thepath@lafayettefirst.life, or you can comment right on this YouTube video. But we'd love to have that discussion. I think it's good for us as believers to celebrate together every now and then, and we don't do that enough. And so let's celebrate this week as listeners of the Path podcast. Next week, we're going to transition. It's Thanksgiving time now. Even though we're recording this on Halloween, it's Thanksgiving time now, so we're going to talk about thankfulness for a few weeks. But until then, I am Jason.
I'm Derrick.
And we hope that you'll join us next time as we continue down the path.